Oh Brother, Not Another Podcast is a co-production of Verso Studios at the Westport Library with me, Trace Burroughs.
And me, Miggs Burroughs.
Welcome to Oh Brother, Not Another Podcast. I'm Miggs Burroughs.
And I'm Trace Burroughs.
And our guest today is James Mapes. And I will read this right from his own little brief bio here. Actor, hypnotist, mentalist, performer, speaker, writer, coach, healer, imaginologist, dreamer, Renaissance man. Now this comes from a sheet that says Confessions of. What is this going to be a book?
This will be a book. I've decided to through a lot of urging, but I said, who am I? So that's why all those words are crossed out, and at the end there's a question mark, because I have an odd life, and I've never given up anything. I just keep adding on. It's like my mother was a hoarder, and I'm a hoarder of careers.
Yeah, I understand that stuff.
And I also get bored easily.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I know you firsthand from two experiences. One, you did a one-person hypnosis show at the Westport Playhouse, and I brought my son, who I think was 18 at the time, and we're sitting side by side, and you're doing that preliminary thing of, biting a lemon and getting people to react different ways. And at one point, I think, if I remember correctly, it was everyone has their hands in the air, and then you tell them, bring your hands down, and my son couldn't put his hand down. And he's a smart, analytical type of kid. And I looked at him and I go, what's wrong? And he goes, I can't move my hands. And I think, what what is the difference? I mean, is there any explanation without...
Oh, it's very easy. Yeah. Listen, we operate on two levels, the subconscious and conscious. 90% of us and our decision-making is controlled by the subconscious, and it doesn't think. It accepts suggestion without question, and that's why I use the lemon. I get people to imagine biting a lemon, and I say, how many of you experienced it? And about 90% of the audience, it's not a conscious decision. It's subconscious. So that's what persuasion is. That's what communication. That's what advertisement is. It's getting people to flow in a direction you want them to flow.
Have you ever had someone come up and they don't respond to the suggestion?
Not on stage. How I do, because I do the lemon and because I do what Miggs, and it actually was straightening your arm out. You can't bend it, which is how I met my late wife. I'm not my late wife, my present wife. And she couldn't bend her arm, so we've been together for 32 years. And
she couldn't push you away.
So I weed out people, and the way I get up on stage is very simple, and that was a pre-Broadway experience, so that was great. I just have people clasp their hands together. I suggest the people that can't get their hands apart come up on stage. There are 6 stages of hypnosis. I weed them out so that then with the remaining people, I can help them create their reality in all areas.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And of course, the other experience was at the Theater Artist Workshop in your mentalism show, which was pretty amazing. So I think I was called up on I was 2 parts. Anyway.
You're on tape.
What's involved in mentalism?
Mentalism is how I started off after, in addition to being an actor back in the day. You know who Kreskin is?
Yeah.
Okay. Kreskin and I were the biggest rivals in the 70s and early 80s. And we didn't think we liked each other. We met recently, by the way. He's out doing 90 shows a year.
Oh, really?
He's
The
83.
amazing Kreskin.
The amazing Kreskin.
He was on like Carson.
And so it is a combination of psychology, persuasion. I don't know what would you say? I mean, it's reading people's body language. I'm going back to the basics with this, and I'm creating a new show that has a message to it. It's finally I can just do this without worrying about making a lot of money. So it's fun. We did it at the second season at the Fairfield Theater, and we sold that out last June. And it's fun. I mean, I still do stuff with hypnosis, by the way.
Oh, it's compelling. There was 2 parts that I was involved in. You called me up, and one was the 3 of us drawing something, and you determined what we each had drawn. Free will, supposedly. He drew an apple, I drew a tree, this person drew a cat, whatever it was, and you determined it. And then the other part was I led you, or you were blindfolded, right? And I led you around. And did you have a knife in your hand?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I better explain this.
Yeah,
People are going to. Well, there's a part of the show where I'm blindfolded with silver dollars and tape, and impossible to see, and people do it from the audience. And then I guess what people bring up from the audience and then the final portion of that is there is a balloon. Actually, it was a blown up latex glove. One person hides in the audience, and then I get a big butcher knife, and Miggs, I think you grab my wrist.
Yeah.
And I read his body language to go with this big butcher knife and break the balloon. It's pretty. It's. By the way, I haven't done it since.
Really?
No, I'm thinking about it again.
Yeah.
It's intense.
But it must be, that must be such a finely tuned thing, because I was not deliberately pulling you anywhere.
Oh, yes, you were. No, you weren't deliberately.
Yeah, no.
You weren't deliberately.
Oh, right.
Because it was think, go left,
Yeah.
right, go, stop,
That's right.
up, down.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you can't hold on to my wrist and think that and not tell me what you're doing.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, is that the pendulum
Yeah,
concept
same
too?
thing. Pendulum concept.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's fascinating.
And we could give this to
Have you-
people, and I just give the instruction, then you can follow up on it. I do this with the entire audience, and the listeners can go get a 9-inch piece of string, and on the end of the string, they can tie anything, a ring, a key, doesn't matter, and draw a circle, and hold this pendulum over the center of the circle, and imagine it going left, right, up, down, or in a circle, and it will go. It will go for everyone, and people freak out about it.
Yeah.
I use this in my coaching practice right up front to show that, because sometimes, I mean, especially if you've got somebody, I coach a lot of CEOs, and especially if you've got someone with that mindset, and they think they're in control or want to be in control, and they see this thing moving and they're not doing anything. Again, the subconscious is moving. It's not the conscious.
Yeah.
It's the imagination.
That's amazing. This is mentalism or hypnotism that you just
No, this is just, I don't know what this is. It's just a demonstration to show that how we imagine, and it's a demonstration to show that we move in the direction we think, even if we don't know we're doing it. So
Yeah.
it's, I talk a lot in my new book about fear and love. And I believe there are only 2 emotions in life. And some people argue with that, and that's okay, but that's a category, everything fits under it. So when you're in the state of fear, you can't be in the state of love. But when you're in the state of love, you can't be in the state of fear. But the state of fear will cause you to move in a direction you don't want to. Rejection, change, success, failure, commitment, poverty. And the more we fear, the more we move in that direction, and willpower doesn't matter.
Now, in the book, you talk about the elephant rider concept as
Yeah.
the subconscious. So, in a sense, you can explain it, but I'll preface it by just saying, if the elephant, has a mind of its own, which is the subconscious, right, and goes where it wants to go, then what free will do we really have sitting up there like a little tiny?
Well, I will explain the
yeah,
elephant and the
okay.
rider, but I will also say that this is my favorite thing. I walk into a group, my least favorite group is a group of men. because I waste a lot of time breaking through all the competition stuff. So I go in and I explain the concept, which I will in a second, and I say, if you have control issues, you better leave the room, because you don't have any control. You have influence over your subconscious, but you have no control. So here's the deal. And this goes back to Freud. It's just a concept that I came up with. And it came from riding an elephant in India, and I'm a good rider. And I got on this elephant, and it took off with a trainer, and I had no control. I started to scream, I started to yell, and I was hysterical. And I had to go the 20 minutes. And I saw that this elephant was going down a path that had obviously been down 1,000 times. And so about 6 months later, I've been trying to grab a metaphor for the conscious subconscious. And I woke up and I went, wow, this is cool. The subconscious, which controls 90% of the conscious choices, is like this elephant. But the elephant has different qualities than the rider on top of the elephant. The qualities it has, it does not think. There's no thought process. It responds, it moves towards that which gives it pleasure, even if what gives it pleasure is destructive, and it moves away from anything that creates fear, even if what creates fear is a growing experience. So it just that, and it can't tell the difference between a real or an imagined experience, period. And that's why I do the lemon, and that's why I demonstrate this, is because when people start to understand how they imagine and catch themselves in this negative fear-based thinking, and what you can do, you can shift the direction of the elephant. Otherwise, it's going to go on the path it's gone on for life. So the rider on top of the elephant is 10%. It's our forebrain 10%. It's the one that can visualize. It's the one that thinks. It's the one that's critical. It's the one that worries all the time. That's this 10%. So that's the concept.
Fascinating.
So you do a lot of, you do so many things, and one of them is lecturing, and
Yeah.
right. And I was looking up all the different topics, and one of them was about quantum leap thinking. What is that?
Well, that was my first book, Quantum Leap Thinking: An Owner's Guide to the Mind, and that really started me forward in my career back in the 80 when I came up with the concept. 83, I was with Washington Speakers Bureau for 27 years, which that was the place to be then. And what I started to think about, and I'm not a physicist, but I started to get interested in quantum physics in a very basic way, and I started to see that people who were really successful had certain traits, curiosity being one, and tenacity, and certain traits that when they all came together, they took this leap, which I called a quantum leap. And also, success, a lot of people have a different version of what does success mean. I mean, we could each give our definition. It's different for different people, but what happens when people take a leap, say you work on a goal and you go to a different plateau, what happens is the plateau levels out before you can take another big leap. And each time we take a leap, it takes longer. And there's certain things you do during the plateau that allows you to go to the next level. So, and then it takes maybe 6 months, and then a year, and then 3 years, and then 5 years. What most people don't realize is that there's actually a methodology to this, of taking that leap. And then when you take that leap, do you just stop? Do you think this is it? Do you have a lot of goals that propel you forward? And that's where I talk about vision. Vision is different from a goal. We're goal-oriented people. A goal has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is either successful or not. But a lot of people, when they don't reach a goal, get depressed. A lot of people, when they reach a goal, get depressed. So I get people in my private coaching practice to create what is a vision. And a vision is based on your deepest values, which I help people uncover. Sometimes they don't know that. And also, not only their values, but what at this point in your life is the most important thing, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and socially. And until you have somebody ask you that question, I have 5 coaches, by the way. I have to, because I'm stubborn and I think I know everything, and I don't.
So you go to 5 different coaches?
Even though I have them all meet in a room, and they resisted this 7 years ago. They said, we work alone. I said, then you're not working with me. I need people to pound me. Sometimes I have 3 that catch me on my stuff, catch me on my excuses, catch me on the fact that maybe I'll say that, for example, I'm 73 years old. 73, I'm not going to be out there working like I did 250 days a year, nor do I want to. And so some people catch me on the age thing. That's, by the way, that's where the book is coming from. That's where my new kind of rebirth in coaching is coming from, and that's where the new show is coming from. Is at 73, I have a lot of stories to tell with entertainment so that people can be inspired or motivated in a different way than they could if they didn't see it. That's it.
So when you go in this room and you have the coaches together, you ask them, "Oh, challenge me." I mean, how do you?
They say, "What's up?"
And you just start talking, and one of them will say,
where I'm at in my life, and the goal of every human relationship is in the questions you ask someone. And that's why listening is so important, right? So what they do is they listen, they'll ask questions, they'll listen, they ask questions, and then they feed back. Nobody's ever really tough on me. Because, well, I'm easy. I go, if I'm paying somebody to do, and often there are 2, there are 3, then it isn't always 5. If I'm paying somebody to do this, I am going to take their advice at least once. It's like my wife, Susan Granger, who is a well-known movie critic, comes from Hollywood. And when I was doing my hypnosis show back in the early 80s, she said, would you learn a tap dance step or a dance step? I said, why? She said, wouldn't it be cool if at the end of the show, all these people that were hypnotized, you taught them that step, and then you put a top hat and cane on them. And so, by the way, that was a huge smash because we did chorus line from a chorus line. But I said to her later, I said, I don't want to keep doing this. A dancing hypnotist? I don't think so. But I tried it because I'll try anything once and see how I feel about it.
It sounds like something the audience would love.
Oh, they absolutely love
Yeah.
it.
So,
They absolutely love it.
so with all these approaches and your expertise and self-realization is not an end game. I mean, it's a constant. There is no goal line.
There's no goal line.
There's no goal line.
No,
Like,
because-
I'm done. Great.
Yeah, that would be nice if it
Well,
Yeah.
we change in age, we change in our desires, we change in our energy, we change in our relationships. I mean, as I told you earlier, my wife has to get a knee replacement, so we can't go to Venice right now, I mean, we love it, we'd like to go, and my knee's terrible from doing karate and genetics and all that sort of thing, so I can't do what I used to do. And I created a healing program for hospitals. Yale has embraced this. It's called pre-op, post-op healing therapy. 10 years ago, I was shooting a film in Scotland, a thriller called The Wicker Tree. And it was a magnificent experience. Susan was the journalist on the set. And I got back here, I got depressed for 3 days, which is not me. And then suddenly I had to go to my doctor about it, sent me to a cardiologist the same day, and that night I found out I had less than a month to live.
Oh, wow.
It was dramatic. It was very dramatic. I had an aortic aneurysm, which would never have been discovered had I not gone. I wouldn't be here talking. So I was so terrified that I literally had to get my attention off me. And that attention was, how could I help people go through this? So the program is really cool because it's now tested, and what it does is remove all fear before surgery, so you don't have the cortisol, adrenaline, negativity. People heal 25% faster. They use 40% less drugs, and it increases their self-confidence immensely. So when they first have to get out, and it doesn't fail. It's all an audio thing. Somebody said to me in an interview some time ago, "Do you have to believe for this to work?" I said, "No. You just have to listen. The elephant never sleeps." It doesn't. We're taking in information all the time.
Is that one of the things you lecture about, or is it in a book? What's that all about?
Yes, it is. Quantum leap thinking was basically about creativity.
Yeah.
And everybody's creative. Everybody is creative. It's just how do you...
And most people deny it.
And most people deny, which I don't understand. I mean, they say, well, I'm not creative. I said, do you raise a child? Do you do this? Of course you're creative. Everybody is. But enhancing creativity means that we have a little more zest to life. And so my job, and everything is about two things that I say, well, here's my life about, is the imagination. Because Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. It is a preview of life's coming attractions, which it is. And the second thing is curiosity. So with those two things, is opening up the imagination means that we're all creative. I'm going to stop for a second. We create positive or negative. People that are divorced 4 times create a different kind of life than people who have raised a great family and have a great relationship. So creativity is misunderstood. To me, it's a rearrangement of the old into the new. So that's part of what I love, is the creative life.
Boy.
I want to go. I'm fascinated by Kreskin. Here. Actually, let's go back further because everyone needs to. You've talked about it a lot, but your appearance in Star Wars, right?
Star Trek.
Star Trek. I'm sorry, Star Trek.
Yeah, I did 2 Star Trek movies.
Yeah, and that was heavy makeup involved.
And the first one was Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, Star Trek 6, and I It was the first time they used phosphorescent blue paint. And we shot in Simi Valley at 110 degrees. It was a nightmare. But the good news, I went throughout the film, but I had a small part. They cut out my stunt, they cut out my line. But what was interesting is I was able in that disguise to hang out with all the cast. Because there was no threat, Jimmy Doohan, and I got to know them all really, really well. Then the second film, because the director was Nicholas, I forget his last name, but I got the second film was Star Trek First Contact, which I had a really solid part. And it was Patrick Stewart and Alfie Woodard. And I played this drunk, and I studied, in order to do this, I studied Clint Eastwood's, how he played a drunk, because it was quiet. It was more of a trying to stay straight, if you remember the orangutan movies. And it was really funny because I came on the set, and I was supposed to come up and kind of stagger out, say a couple words, and grab Alfie Woodard's butt, right? And that's Alfie Woodard, and Patrick Stewart's there, and I'm going, this is. So I did, and she said, "What did you just do?" I said, "Well, I'm just doing it." She said, "No, grab it, go for it." So I did the scene again. I came out and went whack. She turned around and hit me in the chest with both her hands, knocked the breath out of me, and I went wobbling back. It was beyond, and I had to do it 7 times. I was bruised. My entire chest was bruised.
She wanted to be in the moment.
She wanted to be in the moment.
And make it real.
Make it real. It was real.
I've heard now that they have intimacy coaches for movies and plays now to take care of those situations, to make sure she's okay with what you're going to do and you're okay with what you're going to do to her.
Yeah, which really upsets me because that in itself is a barrier and a blockage. If you're an actor, act. Stop being a wimp. Really,
Yeah,
I mean, an actor is a person who is vulnerable. It's a person who is now. There are a lot of people in the business that are stars that aren't actors. That's another thing. Acting is truth. People say, is acting pretending? Is acting? No, acting is being absolutely truthful. It's when I did The Wicker Tree, Anthony Hopkins became a friend of mine over the years, and I coached him on 2 films. And then he coached me on this film. And he said, I want you to take the script, and I want you to read it 500 times without forming a character. I said, Anthony. Tony, he never called me Anthony. I said, 500 times? I have actors who are Broadway actors who do it 150. He says, I do it 500 times. I said, how about 499? He said, cheating. And so I drove my wife nuts. I had one of those little hand counters.
How tedious.
And he said, here's why. Because before you try to form a character, read it 500 times. What happened is and then I had to learn an accent, I had a dialect coach and all that stuff, but that all came later. And after doing it, one day the character appeared. It was like an evil Jimmy Swaggart. Jane Powell taught me tap dancing. Another person taught me the guitar, and then the dialect coach. It was magnificent because this character appeared, this cowboy character.
And did your other professions, inform your act? Does that inform your acting?
Everything informs acting. Yeah. That's why when I lecture to actors, I say have life experience. I mean, go out, travel, meet, be uncomfortable. That's part of the creative process. If you like musicals, see an opera. I don't like opera, but I'll go see an opera because all of a sudden it awakens something within me. If I read fiction, which I love to do, read a biography. Do something that's put you out of your comfort zone. That's what I talk a lot about in Quantum Leap Thinking, is move yourself out of your comfort zone because that elephant's going to resist it, but when you do, you awaken a part of you that's never been awakened or reawaken a part of you.
It's good.
Yeah, so what, back to Kreskin.
All right, ask about Kreskin.
Well, no, your competition, you say, just for specific, for venues or tours, did you
Crisscross?
Yeah,
well, here, this is the perfect example. I thought Kreskin hated me. He thought I hated him. It was our managers that hated each other. Okay. So last year, I go see Kreskin with a buddy of mine. And I went, I don't know if I should go say hi. And I said, oh. So I go, Kreskin is a strange character, but I shook his hand and I said, James Mapes, and he froze. I've never seen him freeze. He literally froze, and he stared at me and stared at me and stared at me. He says, I've always wanted to meet you.
Wow.
And I said, I've always wanted to meet you. And I realized
All those years.
all those years, and he's 83 and still with a new manager does 90 shows a year.
Wow.
Now, is he the one that put out the thing? What would he pay somebody? What was his test?
He ends
challenge?
the show.
Yeah.
He ends the show. It's really cool. If you think of the pendulum, you'll understand. But what he does is say, Miggs, go hide my paycheck in the audience and have 2 cops escort me out of the room, right? So Miggs hides it, and then he comes back in, and he takes a towel, and you hold one end of the towel, and he drags you around for 20, 30 minutes. If he doesn't find the check, he donates it to charity. I don't think he's ever lost a check.
Yeah, okay, so it's that same principle of me dragging around with a knife?
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
So what would you like to accomplish that you haven't done yet?
I'll tell you exactly. I started a novel, Evan Hunter, who was a wonderful writer.
Oh yeah, he was. I was trying to think of his name.
Yeah, he wrote The Birds, Blackboard Jungle,
Yeah.
Strangers When We Meet. He was one of our dearest friends. With his wife and Susan, we went to Africa for 3 weeks. So he was a great friend. And he helped me produce a show on past life regression, but he also helped me write a novel. He was my mentor. And as I often said, he had the gall to die when my novel was half finished. And he was a great loss of my life. So the novel's sitting there, and a screenplay called The Regression. It's called The Last Regression, which I finished with Susan, and our stepson, who's the head of Skydance, tore apart. And I'm redoing the movie. And I want to make it. I got a part for Keir DeLay, who's one of my best friends in the world, his wife Maya Dillon. I would love to get Chris Sarandon involved in it. But I would like to shoot this in Connecticut. And then I'm working in the present on a new one-man show that includes mentalism, but is actually a stage show, an acting piece, where there are different scenes backstage, and then for stage with the audience. It's the real deal. Nobody's ever tried this. This could be a huge bomb. But that's kind of outside of this, front and center. I just have to see if this works. If it works, and it would be a story about a mentalist who's losing his mind.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot to do.
Now, how do you, more behind the scenes, how do you and Susan manage, because she's a theater critic and a movie critic, so you're in Star Trek, and she's reviewing Star Trek. And does she go, standout performer of the year?
No. Any film that I'm in, she says right up front, full disclosure.
Oh, okay.
Or any film our son produces. He's got 3 films coming out. He's got Top Gun 2. He's got Gemini Man with Will Smith, which should be awesome. That's an Ang Lee movie. And the new Terminator. So she'll review them. We're excited. We may go to the opening, but she has to say right up front, full disclosure, this is my son's movie. And then she'll say the truth. She doesn't buffer.
Yeah.
I had the great pleasure, honor of, I think you couldn't make it, so we went to New York to, well, she was reviewing Deadpool 2. So we sat side by side in this special screening. It was a big theater, and there was a lot of people there from all, I guess, anyway, I mean, you must have done that a lot.
Yeah.
But it was great to just see, and right after it was over, she said, "What did you think?" And all I could think of was noisy. She did use noisy in a review, but I wasn't unique to me.
But she said you were so delighted.
Yeah,
it was a different experience for you.
Absolutely, yeah, to be in that kind of rarefied situation, yeah.
And she's seeing two movies today. I'm joining her for one of them, and we'll have a wonderful time.
All right, well, we're out of time. Thank you so much.
Great pleasure.
Mapes.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Look out and
Really interesting.
keep a tight rein on that elephant.
Oh Brother, Not Another Podcast
is a co-production of Verso Studios at the Westport Library.